swept through the mess hall like a northeastern wind blowing across Southeast Asia. They're here. It was mid-afternoon, July 1st, 1969, in Cu Chi, Vietnam. The sun was unrelenting. The swirl of dust from the Chinook helicopter created a surreal red and brown mist that coated sweating bodies like a new skin. As Anthony Andrews gathered with the hushed crowd to watch 7 wary-looking soldiers disembark and collect their gear, his eyes narrowed. All 7 were black. But what Anthony noticed more than their color, the torn and ripped uniforms or the grime covering every inch of their bodies, was their eyes. Fluttering, darting, haunted. Most of the men looked thin and undernourished. One walked with a limp. One was carried in a poncho, and another, who helped the soldier in the poncho, cursed under his breath. Anthony pulled out his Yashica camera and took pictures. Where are they coming from? He asked the private first class who stood next to him, mesmerized, his hands poised as if to clap and his eyes tearing. Somewhere around War Zone C. Anthony, unsure where War Zone C was, looked at the soldier whose eyes remained fixated on the men. What happened there? The private never took his eyes off the men as he replied in the softest of voices. From what I hear, hell happened there. The military police chief came to carry the 2 wounded soldiers. The others, with no one giving a command, gathered themselves, straightened, moved their obviously bone-tired, filthy bodies into formation, and began to march into camp. With 3 more jeeps with MPs came and picked them up too. The 25th Infantry Division in Cu Chi provides reactionary units combating the Viet Cong insurgency. Anthony had read in the briefing manual when he first arrived. Those men must have returned from one of those missions, Anthony thought, as he turned to locate Major Leonard Rainey Bertram, Headquarter Battalion's executive officer. As a black reporter assigned to write about the black soldiers in Vietnam, he was sure there had to be a story behind the return of those 7 men. It was certainly the type the Washington Post was looking for, without a doubt, something Anthony wanted to be the first to tell. Major Bertram, Anthony's liaison, was standing beside his desk when Anthony found him. Anthony found it odd that in the few days he'd been in Cu Chi, he'd never seen Bertram sit at the desk. Cu Chi was Bertram's second tour, having commanded a rifle company in the 25th in 1966. At 6 feet 2 inches, the major was a few inches taller than Anthony. With a square jaw that appeared to be permanently clenched, he projected a commanding presence. But as Anthony approached, he watched Bertram's eyes widen as he ducked at the sound of a mortar falling some half-mile away, before regaining his composure to greet Anthony. Anthony ignored Bertram's reaction in his reddened face, and he shook the major's hand. Major, the men who just arrived, who are they? Where do they come from? Bertram glanced down, then beyond Anthony. I'm not sure. We just received word of their return. I'll let you know more when I find out. I'd appreciate it because I'd like to interview you. Bertram nodded as if he had anticipated the request. I do know they will have to be debriefed before they can talk. How long will that take? Anthony asked. Bertram shrugged. Who knows? Could be days, could be weeks. Anthony looked at the major a few seconds, head tilted to the side. Really, Major? Is that standard procedure? Anthony asked, then hesitated. Although this was his first time he had been denied immediate access to any soldier, he didn't want to anger his primary source after only a few days in country. Yet, he had a job to do. It is in this case, the major pulled papers from a pile on his desk and bent over to sign them. Anthony straightened up. Okay. He pulled out a pad, his pen poised to write. Can I at least get their names? Not yet. Anthony looked up quizzically, then turned to leave. Major? Anthony said as he stopped at the Quonset head door. Yes? The sooner the better for me, okay? Bertram nodded. Anthony wondered if the reason the major never looked him in the eye during their conversation was because of Bertram's embarrassment from his reaction to the mortar round, or because he knew more than he was telling. It became apparent after a week had passed it was the latter. Anthony never got the interview. than any of the other correspondents, including the Army Stars and Stripes reporter, and he still had no names. Upset and curious at being closed out, Anthony tried to piece the men's story together, from whispers and mutters in the mess hall and barracks. Only one's left. 2 weeks in the field. Ambush. Lost. Reported MIA. Reported KIA. But no one would talk to him directly. Sorry, Mr. Andrews. Orders. It's classified, Mr. Andrews. Word from the top, one sergeant related in a whisper. Is anyone caught giving out information on those men will face an immediate court-martial? Can they do that, Anthony asked? The sergeant shrugged. Who wants to be the first to find out? This is after the soldiers have returned. Turner surveyed the room, looking at his friends. He was glad he decided to come when Warfield called for the 7 of them to meet. It was the second time they had all been together since leaving the service 4 years ago, or 4 months ago. Turner had never been emotional, but he loved these guys. At their first meeting, he remembered the men sharing their coming home experiences with each other and how they dealt with their transition back into civilization. First thing Xavier Warfield said he did when he returned home was to buy a pair of Stacey Adams shoes, a brown Bill Glass pinstripe suit, a white silk shirt, and a .38 caliber handgun. The first 3 were optional, the last a necessity, he has said. When the Army took away his weapon in Vietnam, he felt naked. Warfield couldn't explain why, except that he felt much safer with a gun than without one. His first night home, his mother, whom he loved dearly, hovered over him, watching Warfield so intently it irritated him. His father was the opposite. You okay? Yeah, Dad, I'm okay. Welcome home, son, he said, hugging Warfield before going to bed. After a sleepless 3 hours, where Warfield jumped at almost every sound, he took his mattress, pillows, sheets, and gun to the basement and fell asleep within the hour. Why are you sleeping on the floor down here, Zave, his father, with his mother standing behind him, had asked the next morning. You're going to have to bear with me for a little while, Mom, Dad. He didn't expect them to understand, so he didn't feel obligated to explain. The first thing Leroy Casper told the men he did when he came home was to go straight to the house. He needed the comfort of a home, his mother's cooking, and to catch up with his girlfriend, Ida, and his other friends as soon as he could. He figured the busier it was, the better. Casper became hyper in creating diversions for himself, like going out to cookouts, picnics, movies, the zoo, and even to a play. The night was for non-stop parties and anything else that would keep his mind busy. Ida, smart as could be, but a party girl herself, loved it. His friends just laughed, but Casper had a plan. He figured at some point, when he slowed down, maybe the images would be gone. That was his hope. The first thing Raphael Holland said he did when he returned was to seek out his Uncle Farley, who was an ex-con and a drug dealer. Holland stayed with marijuana and wild Irish rose wine for a while before graduating to heroin while working the streets for Farley. The drugs served Holland well, obliterating at least for a short period the memories of sheer terror he had experienced, especially the tiger's roar that awoke him almost every night. But there were consequences, and Holland realized early on he had merely replaced one bad dream with another. With the help of his Aunt Mildred, Holland went cold turkey in her basement and pledged himself he would find another way to erase the memories before he did something the Viet Cong hadn't been able to do, kill him. The first thing Marcus Glover told the group he did when he arrived in Cleveland was purchase a mosquito net, because just one in the room made his skin crawl. He had visited 4 stores before he found one, but even with the net, there was no peace until the insect was dead. The second thing he did was call Oscar Adams. The pool room fight had weighed on his mind in Vietnam. Oscar, this is Marcus. There was silence on the other end of the line. I called to apologize about the fight, man. I hope you accept it. There was more silence before Oscar responded. Okay, cool, so how are you doing? I'm good, Glover. Sandra and I got married. Great, well, I wish you both the best. You and she never, no man, never. Good, thanks. I understand you were in the war. Yeah, but I've got to go. Take care. Yeah, Glover, you too. The first thing Clarence Bankson said he did when he came home was to inform his parents he was moving to Cleveland. As soon as the plane landed at Jackson Evers International Airport, he decided he'd already missed his buddies and couldn't fathom living in Mississippi after having fought for the country. Bankson was afraid he might hurt somebody real bad if provoked. It would be better to leave Mississippi and be around his friends who understood what he had been through. Plus, the way they talked about Cleveland, it had to be 5 times better than living in Mississippi. Irvin Robinson confided only to Turner. He was too embarrassed to tell the others. First thing Robinson did when he got off the bus was head to Ebenezer Baptist Church, where he'd been raised. It was Saturday. There would be people there. As the brick 2-story church came into view, he hesitated, hung his head, and turned to go home to surprise his parents instead. Maybe later, he said to Turner. Maybe later. The first thing Turner did when he got to Cleveland was rent a room at the Holiday Inn on East 55th. He had saved $1,830 of his Army pay. 2 weeks would barely dent his savings. Turner hadn't called his mother because he needed to rest. Too many issues were agitating him. Too many unanswered questions were bouncing around in his head. He understood Sarge when he said he would buy peace of mind if he could. Well, this was the next best move. Rent a room, only go out and eat, and sleep the day and night away, which he did. Being a loner, it didn't bother Turner that he passed on calling his family or friends. 2 weeks of cooling out wouldn't hurt anything, but it certainly might help.